Hello. So they say the future is female. In supporting this, last year, Mwananchi Communications Limited launched the Citizen Rising Woman Initiative. It aims at documenting stories of women leaders to inspire women and young girls to be leaders at work and life in general. With me is Joyce Msuya, the Assistant Secretary General and the Deputy Executive Director at the United Nations Environment Program. Today we are talking about her career journey. Hello, Joyce.
Hello, Salome.
So happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah. You have this rich background in leadership generally. Kindly tell us, how have you gotten to where you are today?
Thank you. You know, the way I would start by summarizing, leadership for me has been a muscle that I've had to develop over the years. I was born and raised in Tanzania, actually here at Ocean Road Hospital. And I went to then St. Joseph Primary School, Forodhani, Jangwani, then on to Werweru. And when I talk about leadership muscle development, for me it started by being a leader even in schools. For example, when I was in primary school, I was part of the Leo Club, Lions Club. So the notion of volunteering, of giving back, of mobilizing people to give back, that for me was one of the initial muscle that I built. And then when I went to Werweru in particular, where I spent 6 years from Form 1 to Form 6, I was also a leader because at the time there was a student government and I had to go and ask for votes. I also think my family upbringing, our parents, my father and my late mother, raised all of us in the house to be leaders, to express opinion. So the environment at home was conducive to actually sharing information. And I didn't realize then what that meant. Now when I fast forward and I'm a little bit older, the journey of my leadership started from Forodhani and all the way. But I also went to Mafinga, National Service, because I am Tanzanian and I had to do national service. As part of that, I also learned both in Werweru and Mafinga how to work, to live, to mobilize people of different backgrounds in life. So for me, what you're seeing today is a product of over 5 decades of investments that started from my family background, being supported to be a leader, especially as a woman. I think I took it for granted at the time, but also the public education system of which I'm a beneficiary of. So it's a muscle that I'm still developing, but I'm also a very feisty woman that is willing to take informed risks, but not empty risks, substantive risks. So I constantly desire to improve myself by sharpening my education, my speaking engagement, my reading. I have learned complacency is the beginning of stagnation. So I'm constantly improving myself.
You have mentioned about public schools in your conversation here. How did that, being in public schools and being able to live like a normal life? Because majority of people would think it is because you are coming from a family which was in the government and maybe somehow, somewhere you was raised with a silver platter. How did that happen?
Okay, so it's a very good question which I get often. Look, one is I'm very grateful of the kind of value system that my parents instilled in me. But I can tell you factually, I have never had a silver platter handed over to me. Everything I have, I call myself to have earned my stripes. But for me, what the public education system in Tanzania did to me personally, it's 3 things. One is because of the time that I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and at the time Tanzania was trying to be a socialist country, we wore uniforms. Forodhani, Werweru, Jangwani, we wore uniforms. So there was no competition, for example. We were all equal in many ways in terms of the artificial, physical things, yeah, and material things. I think too is if I look at the schools from Forodhani, Jangwani to Werweru, I was competing with very capable women, Tanzanian women from all over Tanzania. And then there was this instilled power in us to do sciences. So for example, my parents instilled that you can do physics, chemistry, biology just like any man. And for me, that gave me courage, but also confidence that I can compete. I think lastly is, and I've come to appreciate this about Tanzania after living in different parts of the world. Tanzania has over 100 different ethnic groups, and Kiswahili united us. I didn't look at people from other parts as or non-Wapare or non-Kilimanjaro people. So that unity also has helped me in terms of my leadership.
So working in big positions, including the World Bank in the Republic of Korea, and the other various big posts that you have worked before, which key lessons did you learn in those specific areas?
You know, so number one is I did not start my journey at the World Bank Group as a leader. I started as a health specialist, so I used to do projects, and it has been a building block, you know, from one step to the other. I became a leader after actually proving myself, but also delivering. So every step, every stair that I have taken important lessons. I think one is work ethic. Absolute work ethic. I work extremely hard. I've been in jobs where I work 18, 20 hours a day. And I'm a wife and a mother of 2 children. Two is the grit. You know, some days, for example, there are jobs that I have applied, including at the World Bank, including at the United Nations, that I did not get. But I have, some call it grit, resilience, that I say, no, I'm going to stand up, brush myself off and move. 3, I never forgot where I came from, my background, but also family. So at the end of the day, when I go home, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, and I'm a friend. For example, some of my closest friends now are the people that I've known since kindergarten. Okay. And I'm still in touch with them. Yeah.
So in such works which took like 20 hours a day, and you're a mother and a wife, how did you compromise?
So, you know, I believe women may have it all, but not all at the same time. For me, I am blessed to have an amazing supportive husband who is a partner in our marriage. So, for example, when we moved to China from Washington, D.C., he uprooted his career, even though he has a PhD, to actually come and join me, but also he was helping around with the kids because that's how he was brought up. So I'm very grateful for my mother-in-law and his family and himself of how they raised him. I think too, anywhere I have lived, I have tried to create a village for myself. You know, it takes a village to raise children. So whether we were in the US or China or Korea, I created a group of friends that would support me and my family. 3 is prioritizing. You know, when our kids were young, I never took jobs that involved a lot of traveling because I wanted to be home for my daughter's sports and spend time. But that meant my career grew not upward very fast, but gradually, because maybe I was breastfeeding, maybe I had to take the children. And then lastly, it's prayers. You know, I pray, I'm a Christian, so that has also helped a lot.
So for women who are not lucky, let's call it that way, who are not lucky to get such a supportive husband, supportive family, what can you advise them? And they want to be leaders, they want to grow career-wise, they want to do big things. So what is your advice to them?
So I mean, you know, for me, if I look at my own life, I sometimes struggle with the word lack. Lack, I'm lucky and blessed in terms of having a very solid support system, which has actually made who I am and I have become today. But But also, for me, leadership, it does not have to be a UN type of leadership or a World Bank leadership. For example, some of the strongest, toughest women leaders that I have met across the world, some of them have been community organizers in their villages. You know, in 2019, I was traveling for work somewhere in Gujarat in India, and I went to one of the poorest communities in Gujarat state. But there were amazing leaders who were women who were mobilizing other women and men and children to actually better the society that they live in. If I think of my own village, you know, when I was growing up in the 70s, some of the people that I look up to were my grandmother in Usangi. They didn't have the UN title, but they were leaders in their community. So for me, I think it's important to look at leadership from where you're seated. Use my story to inspire, but think about if I am a woman in a village, in a hospital, I'm a teacher, a person, for example, who has really shaped me and molded me is Mama Kam, the head of Werweru Secondary School, because I spent my formative years in Werweru. She was there, but she was a teacher, but she was a leader. And look at what she has done for women, strong women, educated women in Tanzania. So for me, I think a more interesting story is wherever you are, what role can you play? Now, when it comes to family, these are personal choices. For me, my family is number one. So when my children were young, now the oldest is 22, the youngest is 17. When they were young, my priorities were, how can I focus on breastfeeding? How can I focus on them going to kindergarten school? But that meant trade-off. That meant I could not compete for certain jobs at the World Bank Group because I wanted to be home for my children. So it goes back to the notion you can have it all, but not at the same time. You have to pace yourself.
Slow but sure.
Slow but sure.
Yes, you talked about the women who inspired you. Was it sort of like a formal training as mentors? It was just seeing on how they lead, then you cope with the environment. Do you have like maybe a specific mentor who mentored you to be who you are?
I mean, I have a couple of women, and you know, when you start mentioning mentors, it's dangerous because then you end up forgetting one. Okay. But look, one I would say definitely my mother. Because look, she could have chosen to send us to private schools and to spoil us, but she was one of the toughest disciplinarian that I know. So for me, maybe at the time I did not appreciate, but now that I'm a mother of two, I absolutely understand and appreciate. I think I would definitely put Mama Kamu on the list because I spent 6 years of my life at Werweru. And Werweru was a self-reliant public school, so we had to go and wash pigs, wash cows, go to Shamba, come back, but still be expected to get A's in classes. And then on top of that, she used to say, you can also cook, you can also do needlework. So now you can give me a fabric, I can actually make a dress. I know how to use a pattern. So for me, Mama Kam brought, in addition to my mother, the wholesome of a woman, but also not forgetting the woman's role in the house. But at the same time saying you can be an excellent student. So, and then after I left National Service Mafinga, I've had many women mentors, even up to today, at different parts of my life.
Are you mentoring any girls or women?
A lot. I have actually taken as part of my purpose of life to mentor others, to use my story as a platform to inspire others. I'm a huge beneficiary of mentorship from men and women, I should say. So I want to share the experiences that I have gained with other women. You know, when I went to China as part of the World Bank, I was the first African woman to be based in Beijing in the office of the World Bank Group. When I went to South Korea, I was the first of everything to be based in South Korea. This job that I'm taking in OCHA in New York next month, I'm the first person from Global South. So I recognize the obligations that come with shattering the glass ceiling, but also I see the responsibility is not just about shattering the ceiling, it's actually creating space so others can come and do better than me.
So maybe you can share with us the toxic areas, the most challenging situations you met when climbing the ladder, because you have passed through a lot of big positions, some of them including being the first woman and so. So what were the biggest challenges and maybe the most embarrassing moments in your leadership journey, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so I would say the most difficult challenges, I would group them in three. One is I have learned the higher up you climb or you enter a work environment that is not used to seeing a woman like me, whether it's black or petite or whatever, or even just being a woman, there's a lot of unconscious bias amongst some people that you may be interacting with. Now, what I have learned before, it used to make me very angry, whether it's racism or genderism, etc. But I've come to understand a lot of unconscious bias is grounded on ignorance. So instead of making a quick judgment and run people off, especially when you work in international organizations like the World Bank or the UN, you have to understand. So one of the biggest challenges is to understand, to identify unconscious bias, try to not react to it in a negative way, and then call it a bluff when it is a bluff. So for example, if I feel, even in my current role, that people are discriminating me, because discrimination, sexual or racial, is absolutely not accepted in the UN, then I actually call the person on it, or I hold the person to account, depending on where they sit. So one is around unconscious bias related to me being a woman or a black woman, or at some time a younger, relatively younger woman. I think the second is juggling, and it continues to be, now it's easier because our children are older. But you know, when you're a woman, your reproductive ages are exactly the same if you're drawing a graph when your career should be taking off.
Exactly.
Between 30, 40 or 45. So how do you juggle the biological clock and the career clock and the family clock and the community clock that we have?
And I think most of us are missing it somewhere there.
Exactly, and I think that is the key, and that's where the whole village or the community or the spouses, the parents, the friends, the support system should come in. Because really, even when I look at myself, between 30 and 40, that was the productive years, but also the time when the system was expecting me to climb. And it's a juggling act, and that I would admit is a challenge. I think the third is balancing taking risks for the career. You know, I was born and raised in Tanzania, went to school. After national service, I went abroad to study. But yet feeling like, oh, my family, my friends are in Tanzania. My father is in Tanzania, he's getting old. So this sense that, you know, am I doing the right thing by being away? So that's why I strive to come back home as often as I can.
What should we do as a society? Because it doesn't take just a woman, it's all the village. What do we have to do? Because it's not like each village understands that. It's specific people. What do we do as a society to improve this?
So you have to unpack society. You know, Tanzania is a big country, and different societies have different cultural norms. I mean, I can speak from my own experience and what I would aspire others to do. I think one, it has to start from home. You know, if I was raised in a house where, say, my parents said you couldn't do this because you're a woman, I'm sure that would affect even my own confidence. I think two is try as much as possible to mix with other people who are so different from you. I mean, I took it for granted when I went to Weruweru, and there were people from all over Tanzania. When I went to national service, for example, in Mafinga, and just having, you know, shorts and mustin, etc. Because the more we understand, but also recognize, oh, that culture, maybe there is something I can learn from it. You know, the stronger we become. And I think diversity could be an asset rather than a liability. I think third is just evolution of time. I mean, societies are dynamic, but they don't move at the pace that we as women want. Okay. Some cultures are more rigid than others. So keep working at it. I'm encouraged. If you look at when I was growing up, for example, in the 70s and 80s, there were not many women, even in the Tanzanian government that we have now. Look, we have the first president who is a woman. So those things for me give me hope, but also we have to recognize, I have learned, for women, equality or inclusion, men have to be part of the story. Have to be. I talked about my husband, I talked about my father. If they were not part of the story, I don't believe I would have become the kind of person that I've become. So how do we encourage our brothers, our husbands, our fathers to be a little bit more open and move with the time? Yeah.
So when we talk about gender equality, and now that at least somehow, somewhere we have women holding top position, like maybe the first defense minister, we have the second woman to be a speaker, the first female president. Does this give us hope as a nation in gender equality? Is there hope?
I think what I have learned, you know, I joined the World Bank group when there were not many, for example, African women in Washington, D.C. And some of my mentors then were actually African women from Kenya. One of them was from Tanzania, etc. What I learned is the first step is opening doors for women to come in. So the World Bank put in a policy, even now the Secretary General of the United Nations has what he calls gender parity. Okay. If you look at his top leadership, more than 50% are women. But also, he provides a conducive environment for women to perform and excel. So one is to push women through the door. The other is actually to say, do we have the right space and platform for women to succeed? Because otherwise there is something called tokenism. You bring women to check the box, but you don't advance them. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I think it's very hopeful. I mean, I can look at my daughter and say, look, in Tanzania you have X, Y, Z in powerful women positions. And then to ensure that we also build a cohort of the next generation of women leaders. What I try to do in every role I have taken is to mentor, to inspire, and to make time for women, African and non-African, because I know what that can do in terms of morale.
And what do you look if you want to mentor someone? What do you look in someone?
I look at, there are different types of mentorship. You know, I've talked about me being a wife and a mother, etc. So, for example, I mentor a lot of women about how do you juggle? How do you prioritize? I don't shy away from talking about I slowed down my career a bit when I was breastfeeding both of the kids. I think we have to be open about it as women. So one is around motherhood and career. I think the other is the type of mentorship I do is I look at potential talent that has not blossomed. So for example, even in UNEP, there are some young African women who approached me, young women who I noticed in meetings they were quiet, maybe they were shy, and then I started giving them tougher assignments so they can open up, but also have their back to tell them, if you fail, it's okay, I have your back. I think the third is to push women and men to go into uncomfortable jobs. If you look at myself, I don't do plain vanilla. I actually go for very tough jobs because I have noticed and observed that is the fastest way to grow the leadership muscle. So do not do easy things because no. I went to China, was the first. It was difficult. Korea, it was difficult. The job I'm taking, I know it's going to be challenging, but then you work hard and you persevere. So I tell women, don't do the easy thing. Go and do the toughest things because that's where you get the maximum growth.
So if I ask you to tell us about self-care as a busy leader, how do you make, because at the end of the day we need the me time, how do you make this happen?
One is you have to manage your calendar and not let your calendar manage you. So I'll give you a very simple example. Usually Saturdays, if you ask my husband and children, it's my me time. What do? I can choose to sleep, I can choose to go for manicure, pedicure, or go out with my girlfriends. I exercise, I'm over 50, but I eat very healthy because I have, you know, health history in my family that I need, but I exercise, running and lifting a bit of weights to be strong. I meditate, usually in the mornings, but I also pray. And I pray because I was raised as a Lutheran and a Catholic. I'm married to a Catholic now. But also there's a different way of just being appreciative. For example, a very simple thing I do, I have a gratitude journal next to my bed. And now I do it on my phone. Before I go to bed, I write what are 3 things I'm most grateful for that day.
Particular day.
Yes, because I find it shifts my mind from being a negative person, no matter what tsunami has hit me, to say, you know, maybe today talking to Salome was one of the gratitudes to include in my journal. So it pushes you to focus on a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. And then being grateful. I mean, look, COVID was here, a lot of people have lost lives. And I cannot take that for granted, just being alive.
Given a chance to talk to a young Joyce, what would you say to yourself?
I would say don't sweat the little stuff. Yeah. I think in the, you know, little Joyce I'm looking at, say, high school to 20s, little things, they get to work you out. I mean, now I'm in over 50. Just brush them off, you know, and say this too shall pass. The world is not going to collapse because, no. So don't sweat the little stuff, definitely. I think that would be the biggest advice I would talk to the little Joyce.
Okay, so with your leadership principles, which are the principles that you can never compromise?
Absolute integrity, non-compromise integrity, because the reputation comes even before your name. So integrity is key. And that with integrity comes ethics. So the two are really combined together because no matter what, if you look at great leaders in history, they're the ones who had the courage to say enough is enough, you need to stop. So that is an absolute principle for me. 2 is hard work. I have never had a silver platter. Every job I've had to interview, I've had to apply. Some jobs I succeeded, some jobs I didn't. So I don't take anything for granted. I work extremely hard. Actually, that is one of my strengths, but also weakness. And then 3, I never forget where I've come from. My family, my friends, my society, because I feel that grounds me. That gives me the backbone of the value that no matter what happens, if they remove this title, I know who Joyce is and nobody can take that away from me.
You mentioned something about not paying attention to small things. And next month, it's a new job. Please tell us about it, the excitement, the expectations, the hopes about your new job.
You know, so the new job is very special. And it's very special for me, and not just for me, but for the world, for the United Nations at this particular moment. And I'm immensely grateful to the Secretary General to appoint me for this role. Why is it important? I would say 3 things. If you look at the world today, there are so many humanitarian crises, you know, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, etc. You can go on and on. So for me, this role is a noble opportunity, a privilege to contribute to the world and make it a better place. You know, as I get older, I look back at my life and I said, if I were to write my legacy 10 years from now or so when I retire, what would my legacy be? And I want my legacy to be, she strived to make the world a better place, whether it's at Weruweru or Jangwani or the United Nations. So that is one. I think 2, it's a great honor, you know, to take this role as a Tanzanian, as an African, as a woman,
yes,
as a national of Global South, to be at the table of the most important humanitarian coordination agency of the United Nations. It is an honor, but with honor comes responsibilities. So I have to go and work even harder. I can do that now because the kids are older, you know, and put in 20 whatever number of hours per day. I think 3 is I have always learned from others in every leadership role I have taken. So I'm moving to New York City. The organization will have talented staff that I have never met, and they will help me to develop the leadership muscle that I talked about. I will ask tough questions, I will push them, we can debate, but I'm also looking forward to learning from them. And lastly, coming from UNEP, the largest global environmental authority, we're also seeing humanitarian crises that are driven by environmental challenges. You saw what happened in Tonga, tsunami, etc. So I'm looking forward to building my experience from the World Bank, 20 years, UNEP, 3.5 years on environment, to actually serve the humanitarian world.
Okay. In case I did not ask you a question about you being the environment biologist and the journey that you have went through as a leader, what would you like to say? What do you have to tell us?
You know, so I actually studied as a biochemistry and microbiologist. And a lot of people ask me, how did I switch?
Exactly.
Yeah?
How did you merge?
Switch? You know, for me, what the scientific education background provided is the depth of analytical skills, the strength of using science and data. And as I've climbed up, I have taken those skills to help inform the leadership role. So for example, I talked about every journey I've taken has been like steps. So in every step, I've moved from doing so deeply technical scientific stuff to actually using the transferable skills, say data, to say now I'm giving a speech about something. What is the data that backs me up? I think too is broadening to look at science in the context. My first jump actually was from science to public health. So how can science help inform public health policy? And then linking that and moving to development. So it's like adding, you know, when you have a string of beads, to add beads one after the other in the experience. So I think I look personally at education as solid foundation for a platform to take you higher. I don't look at education as a linear lane that I have to stay in this lane. No, I don't. Because the world is changing. Most of the problems are interconnected. You talk about climate change. You have to think about agriculture. You have to think about air. You have to think about water. So it's more important as well to climb, as you climb up, to think horizontally rather than just vertically. But it is important to have the depth of technical skills to hold you as a professional.
For more inspiring stories on women leaders, keep reading the Citizen newspaper and then follow us on our social media platforms.